What's up, and welcome to another episode of Upland Stories. We've done a lot of these lately because there's so many amazing people to interview in the Upland community. The community is flourishing. It's amazing. So many great people. Today we have RadishHead, who is over the Upland Analysis YouTube channel.
Hi, Lloyd Doyle. It's so good to be here. I'm so excited.
So we met for the first time in Vegas. RadishHead flew all the way over from the UK.
I did.
I think one of the farthest people to travel. I think we had one person from Japan.
One person came from Australia, I believe.
One person came from Australia.
Yeah.
But I was
a hell
really
of a
impressed that you made the effort to get out there. What was your experience being there at Genesis Week?
Absolutely incredible, honestly. To me, I think it kind of really showed how far Upland has come as a community. Just being able to, speak face to face with so many iconic users, and of course, a lot of the leadership at Upland was there as well. That was really interesting. But it was just such a fun atmosphere, and to be honest, it kind of reignited my love for the game a little bit, I think. Just being able to sit down and see all these things that were planned, in the coming months, and being able to talk to people. It was just, what an amazing experience. And Vegas as well. What a city. I've already said I'm going back. So that was my first time in Vegas. I'll be back there as well for sure. So
I'm thinking there's a high likelihood it's going to be in Vegas again, just because they have an office there. I believe it's the second corporate office that the Upland team has. They have Mountain View, California, and then they have the one there in Vegas. So it makes sense, and you can throw parties there of any size.
The Illuminarium.
Yeah, the Illuminarium was incredible.
Venue. Yeah.
So I'm curious. I want to get more background information about you. Like, what brought you into Upland, and what led you from just being a player to being so passionate about it to start a YouTube channel about it?
Okay, right. So getting into Upland, man, I probably got into Upland. It was the spring of 2021, probably April time. I believe my first city release was Oakland, for reference. So I dropped into Brooklyn. But yeah, I think I found Upland via an ad on Reddit, believe it or not.
Really?
I know a lot of people found it on the Brave browser around that time, I seem to remember, but I found it on Reddit. I never click ads for anything, but there was, this, I'd sort of been hearing a lot about these blockchain games and all of that. Wasn't really into the NFT space at the time, only a little bit into crypto. I was into games quite a lot, and I love board games. I love Monopoly. I liked Miles the Llama. I thought he looked fun. So I gave it a download on my phone. I started on my phone. And I think before the end of the day, I'd already spent $100.
Wow.
Something about it, it just clicked. I thought, okay, I see what they're trying to do here, at least on like a very basic level. And I saw the potential. So probably made a mistake there, because I basically shot straight through the FSA threshold, unfortunately, before I even really understood what it was. But never mind.
So I'm curious. There's a lot of different. I noticed there's a lot of different types of players coming into Upland. What would you say your background was more gaming or more like crypto investor, or both?
Yeah, certainly more gaming.
Okay.
You can probably tell by the big bulky headset.
Love it.
I do like. I love video games. I play mostly strategy stuff. I like strategy games like Civilization or Crusader Kings or whatever. But I like some competitive stuff as well. I used to play a decent amount of Overwatch back in the day. I like any card games. I like playing Magic the Gathering or Hearthstone or whatever. I've seen my fair share of games. So that's really the the angle that I was approaching Upland as. And my first impression of Upland was I thought as a game, it had a real hook. Just the fact that you could, get these collections and it was quite flashy. It was all tied to the real world. And the interesting thing is, and I kind of think about this when I compare Upland to other blockchain games, and the reason why I'm all in on Upland and not, I don't know, like Axie or whatever, is because I think the fact that Upland has that real world tie, I kind of make the comparison between Grand Theft Auto and like Red Dead Redemption, for example. People love Grand Theft Auto because it's this world, it's the world we're living in.
Yeah.
It's not like some fantasy world, or it's not the world of the past. Upland has the edge on all of these other NFT games purely because it's the world we live in and it's relatable and people can get excited about, oh, when's it going to come to the city that I'm in? So from a gamer perspective, that's something which really excited me quite a lot.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it makes sense that like strategy games of all things is the kind of your genre of choice, because Upland ultimately is a massive strategy and networking game and community game. Like,
yep,
it covers all those bases, but at such a depth that a lot of people may skip over that when they first download the app or when they're first introduced.
Yep.
To really the depth of involvement you can get into it, right?
It's quite deceptive, really, because you can engage on it at any level, really, and that's one of the many reasons why I think it's going to be like mega successful, because you can easily dip your toes into it, right? You just got to get, you're just slotting in a few collections. You get City Pro, you get King of the Street. Oh, hey, look, it's all flashy. I've got some badges next to my name. Fun. But it's when you start engaging with that community, start just spending a little bit of time in the Discord, whatever, you start to realize there's a lot more going on. And I think as Upland continues to release these new features, people are going to realize actually the amount of depth is almost limitless.
Yeah.
It's the ultimate strategy game. So I'm spending so much time just not even playing Upland, just thinking about Upland.
Yeah.
Just like, when this feature comes into the game, how am I going to utilize this? How am I going to build a community around this idea or whatever? It's just something which is on my mind a lot, and not many games have had that effect on me, for sure.
I agree. I spend a lot of time talking with friends, just theorizing on the long-term like implications of Web3, of the metaverse, and it really is like when you really do your research, Upland is bringing so much to the table, so much more than just what it appears, this like real estate simulator game or this Monopoly game. That is just barely scratching the surface.
It is.
Of the long-term implications of Web3, and I truly believe if you just listen to Dirk and Edan and the founders talk about it, they are thinking 5 years ahead.
Oh yeah.
They are not. It's clear that it's not a money grab. It's not one of these crypto scams. I think if it was, they guaranteed would have had a crypto token.
Yes.
That just
hey,
like
it was,
Decentraland and Sandbox is struggling right now because of the token.
Yep.
But it would have been a money grab for them. They would have had team tokens, and they already could have like sold off a bunch of their team tokens and left.
If it was a money grab, I think we would have figured that out by now, to be honest.
Yeah.
There's a lot of very, very smart people into Upland. I say this to people a lot, but if you kind of look at the decisions that Upland makes in terms of their approach to the economy and to city releases and to lots and lots of decisions, if you look at those through the lens of Upland has a plan and they're in this for the long term, all of their decisions start to make a lot more sense. It's not just a, hey, let's pump up the value of these properties and get out of here. There's something bigger going on in the background. And I think that is fully on track. And I think over the coming year, 2 years, I think people are going to look back on this moment and realize, Upland is going through that transition right now from simple, fun Monopoly game to something much more in depth.
Yeah. I mean, it's very well. I don't pretend to know all the implications of Web3, like long term, and it's clear it's going to be a monumental shift in our economy and our society, in how we interact on the internet, and even the types of jobs that we have in the future.
Absolutely.
I believe I heard Dirk. I can't remember where I heard this, but I think he talked about in years down the road, people having a real world job and a digital job, and in some ways, people are already doing that. But I think he's saying he predicts a large amount of the economy working in these online environments for a primary or even just secondary beneficial income.
Yep.
Like actually their job.
Like he's a visionary for sure.
Yeah.
And like, you and I, we're quite involved in this space now. And even then it can be quite hard to comprehend that world. But I'm trying to stay open-minded and think, okay, I'm a historian at heart. I did study history at university, and I know that the economies of the world have gone through multiple revolutions that would have been considered incomprehensible to those who were living just a few years before. Why aren't we could be living in one of those moments right now? In fact, I think it's very likely where we could be on the cusp of some kind of economic revolution in the world of Web3. So what is that world going to look like? It's hard to comprehend, but I believe we are on the cusp of something quite special.
Wow, that's a beautiful way to look at it with like a history background. Do you have any like economic revolution examples that come to mind as like cool references?
Man, I mean, the obvious ones which jump to mind is surely the the first industrial revolution, when people were going from primarily agrarian living and society. People didn't run on clocks, they didn't run on factories, whatever, and then suddenly people are migrating into the cities. The ways that people lived were changing, the pace of life was accelerating. Man, you could have, in the course of a couple of decades, people wouldn't have believed you if you told them the kind of the kind of opportunities and the kinds of jobs that people would be doing within their lifetime, because it had all been so stable for such a long period of time before then. And really, I feel like we're probably due, something similar. We've had if you think about it, the information age and the advent of the internet, in the grand scheme of things, not that old. If you think about it, I sort of remember when YouTube first came out, about 2005, 2006.
Yeah.
Hasn't been that long in the grand scheme of things, and we're still trying to figure out exactly what this internet age means for our society. And Web3 with blockchain technology, we're hearing a lot about dramatic improvements in computing as well, with quantum computing. Is that going to tie into all of this
AI.
somehow? AI, doesn't it feel like it's all coming together?
It does. It really does.
I feel like
especially circumstantially, like with the changes just with the pandemic that happened, right? Like,
yeah,
so many people had to shift to working from home and adapting to, being on the computer interacting face to face like this, I mean, this already is the metaverse. Like you and
Yep.
I interacting online. I mean, you're in the UK, I'm in the United States, and we're here having a podcast together.
Yep. I'll
Uh,
tell you now, I don't think it's a coincidence that all of this metaverse Web3 stuff really started taking off a few months into the pandemic. I
it
don't
makes
think it's a
sense.
coincidence at all. I think it's accelerated the process that we were already due to go through as a society with all of these new technologies coming together.
Yeah, and there's a lot of smart people behind developing a lot of these technologies. I've always thought it makes sense to me that one of the core founders of Upland, Dirk, is an economist,
Yep.
a PhD in economics. Like it makes sense to me that some of the companies and businesses, corporations, whatever you want to call them, behind really pushing and elevating the idea of the metaverse and Web3 and building the economies for Web3 would be an economics background. Like you could think it could have been just a developer background who's like, I've got a cool idea for a game.
Yep.
But without a deep, intense like understanding of economies and how they develop and how they work, I don't think you could develop a metaverse.
No, not a chance.
Not a chance, right?
No, it's no, you're absolutely right. And the fact that Upland is being, co-led by a PhD economist actually brings me a lot of faith in the idea that Upland is going to achieve what it's setting out to do.
Yeah, exactly. I totally agree. So I'd love to talk about. We talked a little bit how you were introduced to Upland.
Yep.
When you first came in the city of Oakland, and that was your first city release. How quickly, like, did you just start spending more and more time, and like how has your personal gameplay evolved since the early days you joined?
Man, it's. I was actually thinking back. It feels like I've been in Upland such a long time, but really hasn't been that long at all. It's just the time is absolutely it just your perception of time alters when you're looking back through these city releases. You're going, wow, there actually hasn't been that many city releases. We're still so early to Upland.
Yeah.
But as you say, Oakland was the first city release that came out after I joined. It was a pretty rough release, but as they say, it was early, and Upland was still figuring out their roots. And it was interesting because after that, we got Staten Island and Bakersfield, I believe, and this was kind of a real boom period for Upland. There was a lot of people joining, and obviously I was one of them. And it was around that time that all of Upland was minted, the whole thing, and you'll remember that.
Yeah.
The market went absolutely crazy. It was too hot. The markup floors must have been about 300%, like at the absolute minimum. And it just makes me laugh when I look at people on the Discord and they say, no, we got to mint out all the cities. You don't want that. Trust me. You think you want it, but I lived through it, and it was an absolute nightmare because it meant that new players joining had nothing to mint. It wasn't just, oh, I can only mint expensive stuff. No, literally nothing. There was nothing in the whole game. And that was during a real boom period for the NFT, gaming industry.
Yeah.
And I think Upland must have missed out on thousands of players because they looked and saw, oh, I'm already priced out. So that's what Upland have tried to avoid ever since then. And I guess Chicago was kind of my first real like big release. That was kind of a bit of a shock to the market,
Yeah.
that one. And I made a lot of mistakes on that one, as did a lot of people, I think, because we'd gotten used to this world where the cities mint out instantly. So when Chicago was announced, I was thinking just mint anything. I had, I don't know, 300,000 UPIX, just minted whatever I
Anything you
could.
could get.
And it turns out whatever I could get wasn't actually that good. And the city didn't mint out immediately. And that sort of, put dampers on it a little bit. And that's when, that's roughly around the time that I started to create this YouTube channel. Because I thought, okay, at the time, the important thing in order to build your net worth was doing your research on what makes a city unique and sort of investing based on that when the cities come out, and try to flip them based on speculation or collection value or whatever, which is what I sort of did around that time. So that's sort of how the YouTube channel got founded, was on the idea of trying to provide that information to people who might be too busy, or weren't, just wanted a little bit of a helping hand in terms of performing that analysis. This was also around the time that UPX World dropped offline. So
Yeah, that was an interesting time.
yeah, people were flying blind, and I'm not, I'm not going to call myself the only authority on Upland statistics, but I was there to provide a little bit of help to people who just had no idea what was worth buying and where. So that was kind of where I was in the game at that time, was trying to provide that service to people, and also myself trying to build my net worth by basically trying to get into Upland's head and thinking, okay, we've got a few cities under our belt. What sort of areas do Upland like to promote through the collection system, and take advantage of that? And ever since then, I've tried to maintain that philosophy of staying inside Upland's head, because I think it's interesting. As I was sort of saying earlier, I think we're going through a little bit of a transitional moment in Upland right now, and I think this old strategy of dropping into a city, minting it, and being confident that you're going to be able to sell it for at least a small profit, I think those days are ending. And I don't think that's a mistake on Upland's part. I think that's exactly what they want. And you can sort of fight against that and be left behind. Or you can try and understand what Upland's trying to do. And they don't outright tell you how they want you to play the game, but through their actions, they're going to kind of guide you down a certain path, and you need to be open to the option to kind of change the way you play the game based on how those circumstances change.
Absolutely. So I imagine a lot of the analysis videos that you've done are analysis you would have done for yourself regardless. Like it's information you were curious to know, and then you're like, hey, why not share this out? Like, I'm already doing this research for myself. I'd love to share it with other people, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it kind of links in for me, like professionally, I'm a buyer. So I work in a procurement setting.
Very cool.
I love a good spreadsheet, and it just so happens that in Upland you can extract sales data, and I can kind of comb through that and try to do a little bit of number crunching on it, see where I think is undervalued, like where places are trending up or down, lots of different things. So I try to embrace a little bit of what I like to do in my professional life into Upland. And I think everybody should do that where they can, especially as Upland continues to add new features and there's new ways of collaborating, whether you're a designer or whatever. There's going to be so many ways to embrace what people do best in Upland.
Yeah, that reminded me. There's this entrepreneurship quote that I love that says, "Use what you have, start where you are, and do what you can." And like that's exactly the approach you've taken with your YouTube channel. You've taken this career you're already in, and you're making it valuable information for the community. And clearly, you've gained a great following and deserve like a lot of the support that you're getting because you're genuinely helping people who may not have the same career background as you and the ability to do this like spreadsheet level analysis. You're offering a service that helps people, and it can be a win-win situation as you build a YouTube channel, right?
And it's you know what? It's not even my first attempt at a YouTube channel. I've actually back in the day, I think it was when I was at university. I've always been fascinated by the YouTube thing. I do enjoy presenting ideas. I played. I set up one of those Let's Play channels.
Very cool.
Which it's sort of like modest success. I used to play card games primarily, but it sort of dropped off. I got a bit too busy. But the idea of setting up a YouTube channel was always in the back of my mind ever since then. And I saw that niche, I guess, when I started playing Upland. It wasn't long after I started playing that I set up the channel. I think I set up the channel about October. So what is that, like 4 months after I started playing? So yeah, not long.
I probably was on a similar timeline, actually a little bit longer. I think I started in November of 2020 playing the game, and I started creating content in like June of 2021. So it had been like six or 7 months there. But yeah, it's really been rewarding and really fun to just really give your all to put valuable information out there to help each other.
Right.
And we can make a little bit of money off some ad
emphasis on the little
that YouTube pays us. Yeah, emphasis on the little. Absolutely. But hey, as the community grows, we hope to grow with it. I think that's a lot of the motivation behind it, as well as just like it's a fun way to engage with the community. And if we're not going to do it, somebody else is going to do it. Right?
Exactly. And I always tell people, I know it's kind of intimidating, I guess, to see people looking confident in front of a microphone. They sound like, they know what they're talking about. People forget, there's a lot of editing involved. There's a lot of research involved behind the scenes. I don't just prepare a video and pop it up on the internet. I'm not some all-knowing Upland guru. I'm just a guy with like a headset and a microphone and the time to put something up on YouTube. So I always tell people there is absolutely nothing that I do that any of you guys watching couldn't do. So be the change you want to see in the world. Upland is really is supporting their creators more than ever before. I think it's fair to say. It's an excellent time to become an Upland content creator. So if you're watching this interview and you're thinking, I could do that, probably, you absolutely could. Give it a go.
Yeah, give it a go. And collaborate with us. Either of us would love to collaborate with other creators as well. And that's one thing I really love is that, and this goes back to that Mark Cuban quote, the thing about community and how communities will be the most successful projects of Web3, of the crypto space, of the metaverse space. It really all comes down to community.
Yep.
And I have been, both of us have a gaming background. I have been so impressed overall. Obviously, there's bad actors in any community, but overall, I can say confidently that the overall player base of Upland is an amazing, optimistic community who is embracing Web3, embracing the metaverse, and really just diving into everything it could become.
Yep.
And
It's yeah. I mean, it's so true. It's from like within a gaming perspective, there's a lot of gaming fan bases, especially ones which have a heavy online element that can be quite toxic. And the fact that there's you got the crypto space, and there's a lot of odd characters in there, and lots of people who just want to pump and dump or whatever.
yeah, rug pulls.
Yeah. And you merge those two areas together, and I just cannot believe how positive and friendly the Upland community is. I'm almost afraid to tell people that when they ask what's the deal with this Upland, I almost get a bit nervous telling them like, oh, it's like this kind of Web3 metaverse thing, because people just have preconceptions of the kind of people that are involved in that space, but it's absolutely not true. Or at least in Upland's case, I don't know how they've done it. Maybe it's Miles the llama being such a fantastic, friendly face.
Cute llama.
But maybe it's
so
the llama.
true. It's so true. If you take the crypto space overall and the gaming space overall, and you try to merge those together, you would safely assume that could easily be one of the most toxic places on the internet.
Yep, easily.
But I found one of the most supportive. It's easy to make friends, like especially being at the Genesis Week. Going back to Genesis Week in Las Vegas, like I was making friends with everybody I talked to. Like it was just all a good time.
And there's people who went to Genesis Week who would probably generously be called fairly controversial characters within the Upland space. And you know what? Nobody had any issue with them. People were making friends, chatting. When you meet people face to face, it all changes. It's so easy when you're behind a screen to kind of have that veil of anonymity. But Genesis Week broke those barriers. I think it was really positive for the community as a whole.
Absolutely. So tell us more about like what goes into creating some of your videos, like, and the research that you do. I imagine you spend a lot of time, like maybe even more time doing research than you do creating videos, right?
Yeah, I do. Man, I've got this notebook next to me, and I spend a lot of time on the Upland Discord server because I'm a community moderator as well, and people just sort of talk about how they're feeling about certain things in Upland, or I get sort of tuned into upcoming events or announcements or whatever, and if something sort of triggers in my mind, I'm thinking, actually that would be a great topic for a video. I just note it down, and then after work I'll kind of put my thoughts to paper and try to produce a little script. That's kind of how it goes. And then obviously with my favorites, the collection prediction videos, it's just a case of I'm getting better at it. But it's just a case of looking up these places online, sort of sometimes talking to people who live in the cities. Although you've got to be careful about that one, because it's interesting. When I was doing research for LA, I seem to remember there's people who have very strong feelings about certain parts of LA.
Yep.
As a local, and that's very different what a native of a city would consider a must-buy area compared to sort of a wider view, like what Upland would consider worth grabbing. So sometimes you've got to try and remove those personal biases.
It's true.
I'm going to have to do that pretty hard when London is eventually released. It's interesting, but yeah, I've always got my pad of paper, and I always just write whatever comes to mind. I think that's the best way, because you never know when creative inspiration is going to strike. That's what I say.
Yeah, exactly. I love that. It's so true. Like, people who live in a city obviously have some emotional connections to that city and to experiences they've had there too. They value things based on personal experience, and it you got to realize the person I know Upland has hired an official person who is over creating collections.
Yep.
That person, and maybe it's a small team, I'm not sure, but I know there's at least one person where it's like their sole thing they work on. You got to realize they are not from, like, they're only from one place. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
maybe they've lived in a few cities. I don't even know the name of this person.
I don't know if anyone does. Yeah.
Yeah, they keep that person hidden, I'm sure. But yeah, you got to realize that person is also just doing research on the internet.
Yeah, that's
when
what
a
they
city
do.
is released, and which is what you should be doing out there, the viewers, when you are researching, speculating which properties can become a collection. That's probably one of the most exciting features of a new city release is the 1 week speculation period of what the collections are going to be. So this is something you've done a lot of videos on. Almost every city that gets released, you're putting out your research on what you think might be a collection.
Yes.
As you said, you've become better at it. What are some of the things that have helped you in your research? And you don't have to give away all your secrets of the trade, but what can you share with people that's been helpful in doing research for collections?
Yeah, that's a good question. So over time, I've definitely gotten more attuned to the sense of thinking about it from a gameplay perspective, as well as sort of like an icon factor, right? So Upland is obviously structured in streets and neighborhoods, and there's parcels of land on those, and there's only so many parcels of land that fit on a street or in a neighborhood. So I'm sort of becoming more tuned to the size of these neighborhoods. If
how many parcels of land are in a given neighborhood, right?
Sort of in my earlier videos, I would have gone purely on icon factor, really. But more recently, I'm thinking, okay, there's going to be this many collections. If there's only sometimes there's only 2 or 3 neighborhoods that could realistically be any collection of worth at all, because they're the only ones small enough. So that's always worth thinking about. I'm just sort of like gaming it a little bit. Similarly with streets, you can go online and type in, hey, like most famous street in this city. Some of them are just way too long. Like, even if they make it as a collection, not really worth your time. So you've sort of got to think about it from that perspective.
Yeah, because all the collections in Upland, the fewer the properties, the more valuable, and the higher the rarity.
Yes.
So it's easy for someone to come in and be like, well, I know the most valuable spot in a city, or I know the highest cost for a house in the real world in this city.
Yep.
That does not mean it's going to be the most rare neighborhood, and from a collection standpoint in Upland, right?
Yep.
Like,
one recent example of that was if you look up anything to do with the city of Queens, Flushing comes up all the time. It's like the place. There's so much culture there. But in Upland, it's too big. It was absolutely massive. So it wasn't and people sort of darted over there and minted up a bunch of stuff. It didn't even get minted out immediately because it's
Yeah.
just too big. So you got to think
And
about that.
even if it was a collection,
Yeah, it's just
you got to know those
standard.
big ones are going to be the lower value collections,
Right.
right? It's going to be a blue chip collection, not the least valuable if it's a massive neighborhood. Even if in the real world it is like the place to be, the best place to buy a house or the best place to own a business, it has to make sense with how Upland is structured, and that is where people need to remember, yes, it's an investment, but it's also a strategy game. And I
Yep.
love this. I love that
Exactly.
you again come from this like strategy game background and are sharing what you're learning.
Yep. Sort of aside from the sizes of these neighborhoods and streets, one thing which I've noticed Upland love to do with their collections is anything commercial, and I'm sort of wondering if this is again linked to Upland's grander plan, because collections incentivize people to own property and build it up in certain areas. And if Upland in the future wants businesses to come into Upland and sort of engage with the community, well, that's great because the players are already there because it's a collection. That's sort of my thinking. But whatever the reason, Upland love if there's a lot of shops on a certain street, if it's sort of known as the place to go to eat, if there's a lot of cafes there, you've got a pretty dang good shot of making a collection. That's the top tip from me.
Yeah, and you've seen that with ultra rare collections as well, that they're using these really unique parts of a city. Like what is it? Chicago has the Mafia collection. That is like, you could think of like some cool in-game things they could do. I mean, they already did the Mafia tour, but you could think like mini games. You could think, and then you have like Nashville, or is it? No, it's New Orleans that has the haunted places. Like,
Exactly. Yeah.
think how many game genres are built on like horror. You know what I mean? Horror games. So you could do a horror mini game or genre game using those. And then even in Brazil, they did the and this really what I thought of as you were sharing what you were sharing. The samba schools, I believe they're called. Like, and
Yep.
those are a huge cultural thing in Brazil that have big carnivals, big parties behind it. And I think you're right. Upland may be thinking like, how can we get involved with these big parties and carnivals that are going on from a marketing perspective too, because you
Yep.
do need to remember Upland needs to market themselves to the mass market, to everybody, and so they will be thinking, okay, maybe with some collections we can build some partnerships and some cool things that way.
I think that's exactly it. And it kind of ties to something I said earlier about if you assume Upland has a plan and they're actually smart, which they are, their decisions make sense. And sometimes a city will come out, the collections will be revealed, and you'll think, what? Like, Upland's dumb. Like, what are they doing? Nobody's heard of this place. I know when Nashville came out, that was a lot of people were saying that people weren't prepared for these massive standards. There was even one very large limited collection neighborhood as well in Nashville. At the time, I was a bit stumped as well, but I had to think about it, and I thought, okay, let's take it from the perspective. Let's assume Upland knows what they're doing. I think it was because around that time there weren't many accessible collections for new players to mint. That was why they did it. I'm almost certain. They wanted large, unminted collection areas so that new players could come in and they could go, oh, hey, I'm not priced out. I'm not too late. There's still opportunity here. So and again, Bel Air is not minted out, I don't think, is it? In LA? It's the same thing. A very expensive, large exclusive collection. Upland have the stats. They know how much money, how much UpX people have in their wallets. They knew that that wasn't going to sell out anytime soon, but they want it so that people like whales who are coming into the game and they'll go, what can I spend my money on? Oh, hey, Bel Air's free and it's a collection. I'm not too late. That's what they're thinking.
Absolutely. I love your approach of really kind of making a game out of guessing what the Upland team will do, what the collections will be. Yeah, what has been some like interesting like things you found as you've gone back and looked at all the cities and all the collections that can you find trends, you think, or do you think maybe it's changed, like they're adapting over time? Is it mostly random? Like what have you found as you've really like dug into this?
I think on a very broad level, they are increasing the number of orange exclusives and reducing the number of rares and limiteds. That's something I've noticed. They're sort of concentrating it a little bit more towards that orange level. I don't know why, or if that's like going to be a long-term trend, but certainly in a few of the more recent cities, compared to some of the earlier ones, that's the case. I don't know if they're trying to appeal to that kind of mid-level gamer. Whatever
maybe
it
they
is.
feel that's like a really good boost level for the economy. That's a really keen observation. I hadn't
certainly,
noticed that.
When I do my collection prediction videos, I try to focus them around that level. So I don't like to put too much focus on the ultra rares, for example, because even if they hit, nobody's, a couple of people are going to get them. And I don't like to think too much about standards or limiteds because who cares? So I think about mostly exclusives, and if one of them happens to be a rare, then fantastic. But that's kind of the area that I like to focus on, and I think that area is becoming a bigger chunk of these newer releases.
And that strategy is really going to be a really reliable strategy compared to I'm always going to go for ultra rares, or I'm always going to go for rares, because if you're wrong, a lot of times you spend a lot of money like speculating on that, and they're also extremely competitive.
I tell you,
anything you go online and research like is what could be the ultra rare, like what's really unique about this city. There's 1,000 other or 10,000 other people who play Upland who have that exact same thought, and those properties go so fast. And I love your approach to go after ones where you could get at least 3 in this neighborhood before if that's your starting neighborhood when a city's released, you can pick up 3, 4, even 10 properties in there. And I really understand that methodology, because you can really do a process of elimination, right, based on all the previous city releases, to say you can pretty much guarantee that it will be one of these 4 neighborhoods.
Yep, easily.
You could like guarantee it with the numbers that it'll be one of these 4 that's that type of collection. I mean, depending on the city, right? There's some cities with unique attributes, but I love that approach. So what's been like your success rate with guessing those neighborhoods lately?
Yeah, pretty good.
That's amazing.
I did really well in Bronx and Queens, especially, and New Orleans. But it's just been good. I've been able to increase my net worth every city. It's just been a snowball.
So what's your strategy with like how many, like let's say you guess such and such neighborhood is going to be this limited, or sorry, which collection do you
exclusive
make? Exclusive collection. How many properties do you typically go for? How many do you keep, and how many do you flip? What's
Yeah,
kind of your thinking
that's
there?
a great question because that's actually changed over time. And so before, I would hold on to, well, to answer the first bit of the question, I'd using New Orleans as an example. Um, I think I managed to mint about maybe 10 properties
Okay.
in the CBD, which I was pretty confident was going to be an
Wow.
exclusive, and it was, which is great. I actually held on to pretty much all of those because I thought people were sort of underselling it. I didn't want to buy any more of them, but I didn't sell them, and that's fine. I've been slowly selling those off when the price is right. But nowadays, I actually sell off the vast majority of them before the collections are even revealed. It's
Wow.
changed. People used to undervalue collection speculation areas, I think, before the collections came out and the prices used to jump up and it used to be a bit wild. Now it's gone so far the other way that it almost doesn't matter if it's a collection or not. When you're buying it on secondary market after the city comes out, a city, an area, you're seeing it in Porto right now. If you're trying to buy in one of these neighborhoods that has a pretty good shot of being a collection, if they turn out to be a collection, I wouldn't be surprised if the prices dropped. Like, I don't think they're going to rise. It's already priced in. Uh,
Yeah, the
so that's
speculation period alone is already taken care of.
right. The collection possibility is already priced in, even though it's not a sure thing. So that's fascinating. I see absolutely no reason in that circumstance not to just sell everything. And I've seen that being the trend since Detroit. That was the first city because I minted a bunch of stuff in downtown, and yeah, the prices there in downtown went down after the collections came out. So it's interesting, but so that's completely changed my strategy. But I feel like it might be a pendulum. The game is still too new to say, but now I feel like it's gone too far the other way, um, and it's almost, people are going to start realizing, oh, it's already priced in. I'm not going to bother buying it, and then people start bringing their prices down again before the collections come out. So if we have a few more city releases where the liquidity is basically zero because people are pricing their speculation areas as though they were already collections and people refuse to buy them, which I think is already starting to happen, I think eventually that market is going to correct itself. So I think these things do kind of work almost like a pendulum. So it'll be interesting to see if that's true.
That's a very good observation. I can see that for sure. I feel like with my own strategy, sadly, I've kind of always been doing the opposite of what's trending at the time. Like, believe it or not, I had well over 100. I think I don't know for sure, but I think I had at least 100 properties in Manhattan
Nice.
early days. And right
Awesome.
when it sold out, I went in and I listed almost every non-collection property that I owned for just double what I paid for it, which is good. Like doubling your
Yeah,
money is
you know
great,
what?
but Manhattan went like 10x
Now
on
I
everything.
but you need to be a bit kinder to yourself because I was following that market for a long time,
Yeah.
and Manhattan was stuck at about 30,000 UPIX for months, and then suddenly it just broke some kind of resistance, and it went into, it's just like the real world stock market. It went into price discovery, and it just went up and up and up and up. Um, so yeah, nobody could have seen that coming. It was like I used to make jokes about it on my channel when I used to do like weekly floor price analysis. I said, well, Manhattan's still at like 35K or whatever, San Francisco's still at 20. They never moved ever. So it just goes to show you never
Until
know.
Manhattan went to what, like 150,000
Yeah,
minute like floor price,
it
right?
was touching about 180, I think, briefly. Same thing in Rutherford. Rutherford wasn't anything special for a long time. It had normal floor price compared to other non-Manhattan cities, and then it just one day a group of players got together and thought, "Hey, there's only 7,000 properties here. If we buy this many, we can kind of break the game," and they
You can
did.
control the market.
You could control the market, and that was kind of almost like a proto node, I guess. They sort of realized there was going to be a demand for it, and they bought it up. And yeah, sure enough, people paid the prices because they want in Rutherford. Same thing's happening now with nodes. People say, let's build value in an area. Let's make people want to go there, and people will pay the price because they'll see, look at all these meta ventures, look at all these apartment buildings. I'll pay whatever price is necessary to get in here. So that's the way the game's going. It's very interesting.
Wow. Yeah, I've definitely seen that and witnessed it. And that, I'm curious, did I ask this? Do you hold, like, let's say you get 10 in a neighborhood, do you like to hold 3? Do you like to hold on to collections and
Yeah,
then sell all your extras, or what's kind of your thinking there?
I always hold my collections. If I've only been able to mint 3 and it turns out to be a collection, I just won't sell any.
Yeah.
If I mint 2, I'll usually buy the third one.
Yeah.
And if I mint 1, I'll just sell it. I love having collections. That I think that's kind of what sustained me through this kind of extended slow period in the Upland market, is that throughout all of these city releases, I've just sort of slowly stockpiled just a really impressive list of collections on decent properties. So I'm able to take that, 8K UPIX a day and use that to fund new city releases.
Yeah, your increased monthly earnings is
Yeah,
that's one of my favorite strategies that I've talked about for a while. It's harder to do now, but there was a time where collections would be announced, and I think the last one that was big was Nashville, that I had a lot of success minting really massive mint price ultra rare properties. Like, is there a greater thing you can do for your monthly dividends? You know what
and
I mean? Like,
it feels bad when you do it.
because
But
you're literally getting like 40%, 45%
oh yeah, yeah. And I tell
returns.
you what, you can still do it because just look at some of these exclusives, like very expensive ones in Los Angeles, Bel Air. You can still buy it for dollars for about 70% mint. That's basically a 35%. You know, that's like a 35% yield. You
Yep.
can't get that anywhere else. So it's still possible. And I tell people that anybody who can afford to buy a Bel Air collection under mint should do it. It's just a
Yep.
no-brainer.
And a lot of these are for sale for USD, but this is really, I think, one of my favorite strategies for new players who are just putting money in the game. So make sure you understand this principle. There is a lot of times, really understand what RadishHead is telling us here. Like, there's a lot of times where you can come in the game. Some people are really anxious to get their money out because for whatever reason they don't see the same long-term vision that you may see with the full potential of Upland. Buy really big mint properties. So one of my favorite things, go to one of these data tools and you can sort it by markup, right? And if you find really big mint prices in a collection neighborhood that has a markup of below 100%. So what RadishHead is saying is there's some big properties in Bel Air that some people have purchased, and for whatever reason they want to get money out of the game. So they purchased it, let's say, for 100,000 UPIX, which is $100 USD worth, and they might be listing it for sale for $80 or $70. So your money is right there. Instead of buying fresh UPIX from the store, you can put money in the game by buying that property for $70, and now you have a property that's worth $100, and you're getting gains on $100 worth of mint price. Like you're getting, so complete that collection, and let's say it's a 2x boost, just to make it easy. The 15% you gain dividends on any property you buy, the mint price of that property, you're earning 15%. Let's say in Bel Air it's 2x. You're now earning 30% return on 30% annually, right? On that property, so on that $100, which is, I mean, that's crazy. And you bought it for $70. I mean, that really is an awesome return. I mean, if I was brand new to the game, that would be my key like buy-in strategy. Yeah. And then you got to realize those properties are going to be paying you so much more monthly interest than if you just went and minted a brand new city. Like so that's where I think the market's at a good spot, and it's a win-win. Some people want to just get money out, you know what I mean, of the game right now. Maybe they have bills they got to pay.
Yep.
Some people don't believe in the long-term vision. Maybe they're hyped on something else. That's okay. But you can take advantage of that and really understand what RadishHead is teaching us here. This is huge.
And you know what? It's a bit of a reduced risk strategy as well compared to buying stuff at mint price, because if you decide that Upland's not for you or you need the money for whatever reason, just relist it at 70, 80% mint, what you paid for it. You're not losing any money because you already bought it at that discount. It's not like you're the person who bought it at 100% originally. Yep. You know, you're basically just getting your money back, and it's going to sell quicker because it's, you know, at 70% mint and somebody's going to want it.
Yep. And I mean, that is such a great strategy. I really love it. And it really is like reinvest. A lot of people don't also factor in the snowball effect, I like to call it, of like compounding interest pretty much, right? Like you can reinvest this money every month into more properties. And I really think at the end of the day, anything you buy at mint or below mint is it's a great purchase because you're earning 15% or more annual interest on that purchase, plus the compounding interest of reinvesting it. So it really is amazing. The biggest risk I think players can make is if they speculate too much and they get really excited about something and they maybe buy something for like 10x what it's worth, and then they might be stuck with that property for a while until the game reaches mass market and it's like a global massive economy and game, you know?
Yep. And you know what? If you do end up doing that, don't feel too bad on yourself, because we all do it. I do it. I still do it. I just can't resist. Sometimes I see a property, I'm like, I just want it. And then I think, oh no.
If it's honestly, that still can be a great strategy though. Even if you're buying properties for 10x, if you believe there's future value in that property, if it's a property you just love and want to own because of the emotional connection you have to it, there's nothing wrong with that.
Exactly. Yep.
You own it. You're the single owner of that, property.
Real ownership. And, you know, Upland is moving in that direction where it's all about what value you can add to the property. So, you know, if it's some massive empty lot, you know, in the middle of nowhere, why don't you buy some of the lots around it, put a factory down, maybe in the future we can have some supplementary businesses that can support it. You could have your own little manufacturing hub, and then suddenly people want to be located near you. So it just, nothing is ever a lost cause in Upland. You can turn anything into something.
Yeah, that just inspired me to think, where can you get the cheapest UP2 up square property, like cost per up square? This is a free idea right here. Research the cost per up square and find the biggest piece of land you can buy. Just like RadishHead said, it doesn't matter if it's out in the middle of nowhere. With car manufacturing, with outdoor decor, we've been told already that there's going to be manufacturing plants, but there's also going to be stores that sell these that are maybe in more strategic locations. But the factory itself does not need to be necessarily in a strategic location, unless it's a city no one's ever traveling to, and you're going to have to like ship all your cars between cities. I don't know what that's going to look like, but I mean, getting any property that's way out in the suburban area of a city that's massive, that's really big, I mean, that alone could be a great strategy if you want to get into manufacturing.
Absolutely. I'll tell you the funny thing. I reckon if you ran those numbers, the best place to put your large car manufacturing plant is probably going to be in Detroit. You know, so we're almost going to revive the car industry in Detroit in Web3, which could be really fun.
Yeah, some of these low market ones, like maybe Bakersfield, you could get a massive property for pretty low costs. I mean, that's where there's actually benefit in a lot of these tier 4, tier 5, maybe they're lower hype cities, but think of the business implications of it's all about size when it comes to these manufacturing plants to produce what you can out of these. So
yep, absolutely.
Yeah, it's going to be really fun to see how the economy shifts as people start to manufacture cars and outdoor decor.
Yeah,
I think that's really the next major evolution of the Upland metaverse.
I think for me the most fun thing which is coming up, which really intrigues me in terms of the Upland economy, is that I think we're going to be moving to a time where the average player won't be able to fully participate in every single thing that Upland has to offer. I don't think you're going to be able to invest big in every new city release and own a fleet of trucks and operate a metaventure and run a factory. Nobody can do it.
And buy NFLPA legits.
And buy legits.
Soccer
and
legits.
Whatever else is coming. So more stuff's going to be coming. You can't do it. Maybe Abdullah could do it. I don't know. But the average player could not do it. So you're going to be specialized in something. And there's going to be players who are going to be making UPX returns, dollar returns, maybe not even buying properties at all. They might just own a fleet of trucks and they're just going to be transporting people's goods all around. That's I think we're already starting to move towards that. And people have been kind of spooked off by, the cost of some of these early cars. But I think that's again part of Upland's plan, is that they're trying to get us used to the idea that this shiny new thing's coming out, but you might not necessarily be able to go all in on it straight away because you need to make sacrifices. You can either do every city release, or you can buy a nice truck. So
yeah, that reminds me of something I've heard Dirk talk about quite a bit, is like, again, simulating a real world economy, right? And creating necessary friction and necessary scarcity and making it as close to the real world as possible. And I love theorizing because there's already a bunch of games that exist that people play. And I'm talking about simulation games. Are you familiar with the genre?
Yeah.
Like
Microsoft
Flight Simulator.
Sure.
Or there's a truck driving
Euro
one. There's
truck
a train
simulator.
one. Like these are already super popular games where people actually are simulating as if they're really flying a plane. Like every move you're making in Microsoft Flight Simulator could be the exact moves. You have to study wind resistance. Like if you get really expert at some of these games, you actually have to, and it correlates with real flight paths and flight times.
Yep.
Imagine a day where Upland merges in with these simulation games, and in order to get a flight from city to city, an actual player in the game actually has to manually fly that flight the time that it would take to fly that flight in the real world, for example. And so you actually have to buy a ticket in advance, maybe,
Right.
just like the real world, and you actually have to have a player who maybe there's a pilot program where you can register to pass a test and become a pilot in Upland, and then all the fees we're already paying to fly, some of them are pretty steep. When we're talking about international flights,
Yeah.
you take a flight with like hundreds of players on it, you could, in theory, use the community pool and all the money that went into that flight to pay the pilot a significant amount of UPIX for doing that flight, and that would be a service that would be awesome. And then imagine like delivery services or Uber services where you have cars where they have to actually do a driving simulator. Like it's not, because we think like, oh, it just happens automatic. You book a flight, you start going, and it just goes,
Yep.
right? But imagine we create simulators where it actually has to be done by a player. Like
Yep.
that to me is extremely exciting.
And now I think you are talking about the metaverse and what we might. I think this is Upland's vision, and I know people sort of look at the pace of development of Upland. They might be thinking that's ridiculous. They're never going to make anything like that. But the thing is, they don't have to. What they're doing is providing the foundation that all of this other stuff is going to sit on, like user developed content and plugins and stuff. Is going to be, that's what Upland is going to be all about. They're providing this ground level functionality and bringing all the players in. They're providing the platform, but all of these developments that you're describing here, I think it could happen, and I think it could happen sooner than people think.
Well, it's interesting because I think they refer to themselves, like for example, when we're making YouTube content and we select a category for our video,
Yep.
it's a real estate simulation game is the new topic. And I don't know who selected that or if that was auto-generated somehow, but I'm assuming someone on the Upland team select, because it used to say something else like build a real estate empire, and then before that it said real estate or property trading game.
That was it, property trading game.
That was the longest one, right? The new one is real estate simulation game, and it really is like, you can think all of these simulation games that I've never really got into any of them, but I know like train simulator, flight simulator, like these are so in-depth games that people like who are actually passionate about being a pilot. And I think we already actually have an economy in Upland that could sustain pretty much a full-time job for 50 or more players who play the game, to be almost like I'm a full-time digital pilot in the metaverse. How crazy is that to think? Or I'm a full-time Uber driver, digital Uber driver in the metaverse.
And you know what? You and me, we could set up our own in-game radio stations, and people will tune in while they're driving around in their cars. It's all happening.
It is all happening, and Upland or something like Upland is the platform that environment will be built on, and it's extremely exciting just to even talk about it.
There's a lot of people, professional organizations have invested a lot of money in Upland because they're placing a calculated bet that Upland could be the organization to pull that off. There's a lot of there's a lot of competitors in this space, but certainly Upland has a lot of big backers, a lot of big money going into it. So if anybody's going to pull it off, I think Upland's got a really good shot.
Absolutely. Yeah, Animoca Brands, which is probably the biggest investor in Upland, has their hands in like every metaverse project. Like,
Yeah.
And then OMA 3 is like the standardization protocols and interoperability.
This
That
OMA
is-
3 thing, I don't think people are talking about it enough. That's huge. Yeah,
It is. It's massive.
Yeah,
And I think we'll see real world like gaming brands joining this because they're going to want a different way to market their games, right? Like imagine games wanting to build on Upland as a platform, because like you got to think, as a game developer, you have to decide where you're planning to sell this game. Like, and as of right now, there's the main ones. There's Steam, which is most PC players are using Steam. There's also like the Epic Games Store, or platform launcher, if you will. But then you have like people in the Xbox environment, and that's the big one I've been in as a gamer, is the Xbox environment. Then you have the PlayStation environment or the Nintendo environment, which pretty much everyone in the world has had at least one experience with Nintendo and Mario. But start to think of Web3 as like a place where these game designers, who, when you first create like an indie game, for example, they're like, okay, we need to approach Xbox to see if we can get it on the store. Well, Upland is saying, hey, consider Upland being the platform you build your game on. And by the way, this is blockchain technology with all these Web3 implications. So it's just you could start to think of it as a platform like that.
Absolutely. And I do think there's a lot of animosity about NFTs in the gaming space, and I kind of see why. I think the gaming community is naturally quite suspicious to any new technology being implemented in their space, because it usually means they have to pay money for something that they wouldn't have to have done previously.
Yep.
However, I genuinely, the more I think about it, I think it's inevitable that NFT is the future of video games. If, for example, I've played all sorts of online card games. I've paid money into those. I've gotten digital assets. Why would I ever do that again for something which I just have a picture on a screen and I don't truly own it and I can't resell it or trade it or whatever? I think in 10 years' time, people are going to look back on that and think, like, why did people ever do that? Why would you ever pay money for something that you don't own? That's where it's going. Everything's going to be ownership. And game development is going to change with NFTs as well. I think it's going to democratize game development. You're going to have platforms where a game developer can go, I want to make this game, and people might be able to like buy shares in the game to fund it. It's like a Kickstarter, but it's like blockchain backed. And then when it goes out to market, you might get like a share in the proceeds or whatever. Like there's so many things you can do. That technology just didn't exist before. If it did, we'd be using it. It's just a no-brainer. That's where the industry's going.
Well, and even Upland itself is a game that like everyone who plays is contributing to building that game, like permanently in this layer one world, this layer one metaverse.
They're literally embracing that concept right now. They've already, they've announced their partnership with Porto FC, but you know what? They didn't just spawn the stadium out of thin air. We're having to build it using the actual mechanics inside the game. They didn't just cheat it out, which they very easily could have done. This stadium isn't going to exist unless we make it exist.
Yep.
You know, so Upland is very much sticking to their own rules. That's something I really respect. I don't think they get enough attention for that. It's like with the MV motors, the cars didn't just appear; they've been built. They've actually been constructed with the spark that the MV motors account owns, and that took time to build. And they actually have to be stored on the plot. They have to follow the same rules as us. So they are setting that foundation already.
I love that. Yeah, the spark economy alone is truly. It's hard to even imagine all the implications of that in the future, but I see it being extremely valuable. I just talked with Mossy Jake earlier about, like, wow, there's players spending hours and hours every day treasure hunting to build their spark balance, and that could pay off massively in the future.
I prefer
you already can make money just gaming, just playing a game, and that's called treasure hunting in Upland for Spark.
Yeah.
And you can then sell that, rent that Spark out on the Spark exchange and make money doing that.
Right. And there's so many things that have already been confirmed that I don't think are priced in yet, as far as spark value goes, or people wanting to accumulate more of it. For example, when users get their own car factories, it's been confirmed that in order to improve the stats of the cars which you're pumping out, you've got to invest spark as like an R&D budget, and that's going to be a lot of spark. That's going to be a ton of spark. I think these the biggest factories are going to probably be owned by consortiums of players, not just one player, because you're going to want hundreds of spark. People are, to have the prestige of having the best car, not just a great car, but like if people are being really serious about racing or wanting to get from point A to point B as quick as possible because it's a city release and every second counts, they want the best car. Even if it's only 1% better than the second best car, they're going to pay hundreds of thousands of UPIX just for that 1% difference. And the factories are going to be competing like crazy to get as much spark as possible to invest in R&D to be that one factory that everybody wants.
Yeah, and there's going to be like a spark that, like, there already is a spark value within the spark exchange economy, right? Like pretty much 1 hour of spark invested is like 20 UPIX per hour or
About
something like
UPIX,
that, roughly. And so, yeah, if you're talking about manufacturing a single car that takes, thousands of hours, you're talking about a lot of spark being invested for a lot of time to manufacture that vehicle. And so built into the economy is already people have had to buy this spark. People have had to spend hours and hours treasure hunting to earn spark. And they're not going to it's not going to go to waste. Like, you're not going to have someone who's just selling cars for cheap because they randomly convinced a ton of accounts to invest spark. Like,
exactly. Yeah.
You're just not going to have that.
And I see, people are sort of saying, the value of spark's been dropping because it's been a while since we had any utility for buildings. They're all thinking the thinking is too short term. It's not about we haven't had a new utility for buildings for a while. We already know what's in the pipeline. So why not buy it, accumulate it now, because we know we're going to need it in the future. I'm buying spark every spark week. Yep. I don't have enough time to treasure hunt properly. I do a little bit, but not enough to get the amount that I need. So sometimes I feel like I'm one of the only ones still buying this, but it's worth it in my opinion.
I've invested a stupid amount of money. I've invested probably $3,000 USD just in Spark.
Sounds about right. Yeah.
And it's like, I believe in the future value of that. Like that Spark, in theory, that just $3,000 investment over time could generate me
And
really high
income,
returns. Of
right?
course, it's
It could
speculative.
generate you an income. Like we don't know where it's going.
Yeah.
Um,
And over
if
time, they may make Spark more expensive to accumulate, if anything, right? Like I don't see them dropping the
I'd be
cost of
very
Spark
surprised. Yeah,
because
I'd be very surprised.
they know it's extremely valuable for the future economy.
If you think about, and this is sort of going back to what I was saying about thinking about Upland's plan, right, in the long term. If you assume, and I believe that Upland does have this plan, that they want to go truly mainstream, right?
Yep.
That's the reason why they have an app, and they're very careful to make sure that this app is always all of their new developments are always working on the app, and they don't want to implement any strict barriers to KYC because they're worried about the new player onboarding experience. They want Uplands to be a 1 million player game.
Yep.
I honestly believe that's
At
the number
least,
they've got in
right?
mind. At
Like
least a
that's
million,
I
maybe
see it.
tens of millions.
I see Upland sometimes as like a social media company.
Yeah,
Facebook, Instagram, TikTok.
that's what they're going for.
Like almost everyone you know has at least one of those apps on their phone, and engage with it regularly.
Now imagine your Spark in that environment. You have to think longer term. Yeah, okay, having 5 or 6 Spark right now, you can build a few buildings. It's pretty cool. But imagine having that much Spark in a world where that Spark is spread across 1 million people, 10 million people. Suddenly, the value of that has increased dramatically. The average amount of Spark per user is going to be a lot lower, and you're going to have a lot more say in how the Upland metaverse gets developed, because not many players are going to have the ability to shape the world in the way that a player that has the amount of Spark necessary can do.
Absolutely, yeah. I completely agree. If you've been convinced for whatever reason on the long-term value of Upland, like RadishHead and myself have, like clearly we're just nerding out on the potential of this game, but it's because the Upland team has created this vision that is, and not only just built a website and said, this is what we're going to do, just what they've already given us and are showing that they're in the process of developing is monumental. And I just think regardless of if they become the like biggest metaverse of the future, like I do like to compare it to social media companies because I think it'll be a similar competition. Like there will probably be 3 or 4 metaverses that are like the most successful metaverses. Yep. Hopefully with OMA 3, all of those metaverses are interoperable, so it doesn't matter which one you're a part of, because they're all pretty much sharing in their success. But it's hard for me. This is not financial advice, right? We got to give that disclaimer, but it's hard for me not to be convinced based on everything I've seen, everything I've researched, that Upland could very well either be the top metaverse of the future, one of the top metaverses of the future, or at the very least be acquired by the largest metaverse and implemented into maybe even a grander vision of a metaverse. You know, if for whatever reason a company comes along who's able to do it faster and more efficient, that's pretty much the thing in our capitalistic society, is like if someone can come along, do it better, implement changes faster, like what Fortnite did to PUBG, right? What Fortnite did to these battle royale games that came before it. They just did it faster, they did it better, they were implementing quicker. That's really the only risk in my mind with Upland, because it's guaranteed that something like it will be like $1 trillion
Oh yeah,
industry of the future.
yeah, yeah.
So it's either like, and just I think just being involved in Upland regardless is going to make those of us who've already been thinking this way for years. Like, what's crazy to think is most people haven't even been introduced to the metaverse, right? Like, or even had any type of experience with it. But you and I have already been making videos about it, theorizing about it for over a year, both of us. And like, after a certain amount of time, that will be valuable because you will already have expertise, just spending your time doing your research. And I also want to just give a quick shout out. I highly recommend people check out the book that's been released. Dirk is one of the co-authors of that, Navigating the Metaverse.
That's it.
I think it's a guide to Web3, but check that book out, Navigating the Metaverse. Maybe I'll actually put a link in the description below. I'd highly recommend you check out that book. I think Upland will show you how futuristic the founders are if you read that book. Obviously, they're a company who's marketing themselves and just talking about Upland. Like, Dirk can't always talk about his 10-year vision of what Web3 and the metaverse will become. But if you go read that book, there you have it. You can see his, like, at least pieces of the long-term vision. And you can then ask yourself, do you believe that this vision is what the future of the metaverse and Web3 will look like, and base if you want to invest or not on that? You know, I think that's up to you to decide if you think it's valuable or not.
Yeah. I can't really add to that.
I'm like over here preaching. Sorry,
No,
get off my soapbox.
That's so true. As you say, it's, you know, not financial advice, but it's a gamble that I've made based on a lot of things which I've seen and read. I've stuck around with Upland this long because everything that I see from them suggests that they are working towards this grand plan. And I think this plan is going to work.
I completely agree. I'm convinced. Man, I've loved our discussion.
It's been fantastic.
I know that you need to get going fairly soon. So, but hey, I'm going to make you a promise. We're going to do more of these
Excellent.
videos often, my friend. And,
very good. I can't wait.
I'd be happy to come collaborate on your channel as well.
That sounds great. I'll invite you. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much for joining. And is there anything else you'd like to share with the fans out there?
Oh, well, I just want to say thank you to everybody who's managed to get this far through the video. It's a very good viewer retention rate. Yeah, if you've liked what you've heard, check out my own channel, of course.
We'll link the Upland Analysis channel below for sure.
And I think the most important thing that I've shared today really is the point about content creation, because the Upland community is so positive. Upland as a game is so supportive of their creators. You've got no reason not to give it a go. If Upland is going to grow and grow and grow, like, you know, Loyal Doyle and I think it is, there's room for plenty more people to give their thoughts on where Upland's going and what you think about the latest developments. Or maybe you could have a niche in, you know, when racing comes out, maybe you could have a racing channel, or you could have a logistics channel. Who knows? There's going to be so much potential
if it gets big enough, like we are both convinced that it will. Like you said, you could have an entire channel just dedicated to racing. Like you said, you could have an entire channel just dedicated to the NFLPA legit market and like what's happening, because like you mentioned earlier, there's going to be hobbyists and people that come in who are just only interested in one thing.
Yep.
The collectibles or a business side or Some of these simulator type games we're talking about that could easily be implemented. But
exactly. So just as we're saying that the sort of the age of the upland generalist player who's taking part in everything might be coming to an end, so too might the age of the upland creator generalist. We might have to start focusing more on certain things. It'll be very interesting to see. So yeah, thank you very much for inviting me, Loyal Doyle. That is my my takeaway, I think, for the viewers for this one.